Okay, gentlemen, thanks very much. Now, as I said, I'd like to welcome representatives from O'Brien Transport, and I'll get you to state your name and the capacity in which you appear today for the Hansard, please.
Dean O'Brien. I'm Director of O'Brien Transport.
Thank you.
Rod McIntosh, the HR and Compliance Manager for O'Brien Transport.
Tremendous. Thank you. Thanks very much for coming today. Mr. O'Brien, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make an opening statement before we go to questions, but please take as long as you like on the opening statement, and it's your opportunity to tell the committee and the rest of the world what's going on. What do we need to do?
First of all, thanks for the invitation for being here. We've had a bit of a look at the questions that you've posed there. I think we would probably prefer just to be questioned on it and just see. There's no real opening statement on.
No, that's fine.
We just want to find an even path for you guys. So give you as much information as we can.
That is fantastic. Thank you very much. And you know that this inquiry, I'll just run it past you and to make it as easy as possible for you. This came out of a Transport Industry Standards Forum held in Canberra. There were nearly 70 representatives of the transport industry, ranging from the top, when I say the top, the big companies, through to small, medium enterprises, national and state organisations, Transport Workers Union, the National Road Freighters Association, NAT Roads, and academics and trainers. If I miss someone, I apologise. But the call was coming as, look, the industry is in the situation, this is what's coming off, not just me, as the mouth up the front, but the industry is in an absolute squeeze at the moment that we've not ever seen before. It's always been a very competitive and rewarding industry, but now the squeeze coming from the top of the supply chain down now is getting to crucial, to a crisis state. And I use the terminology, something's got to give. And I also use the same terminology that the three most the three most disgusting words that can be put together and presented to a transport operator, being either a business or a driver or an owner-driver, is sharpen your pencil. What I have seen from my own experience is the rates are going south. The pressure is going north. The over-regulation in this industry. So really, and I know you've got clients and you've got to be very careful, so you can be very generic, and if you don't want to go down the line, please feel free, that's all. But if I can just firstly ask how you've seen the industry, how have things progressed? Look, tell us a bit more about O'Brien Transport, if you could, please.
I think with we're well represented, NAT Roads, Australian Logistics Council. They do a great job, and we know that they've answered and they've posted for their comments on this, and we agree with everything they say. So we don't want to go and rehash what they do. So we thought we'd come here and as a representative of the industry and just try and nut down for our point of view of transport. There are. The first question there on the enforceable minimum award rates, is this to do with wages for drivers, or is it to do with us as an industry and a marketplace situation?
The first part, let me just grab them here.
Yep.
I should know them off by hand, but the first thing, I'll start the conversation here, and this may help Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah.
We have in this land a minimum legislative instrument that is the modern award. Right, wrong, or indifferent, there it is, and we know rates of pay go north of that under enterprise agreements and all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
But what we also know is, and my desk is inundated with this stuff, there is so much of payments under the enforceable, I use that term very loosely. So my concern is, I'm not blaming the transport companies. There are some rogues, I'll make no mistake, we know that, and you're competing against them, and we get all that. But the greater argument here should be that the transport companies should be able to not only cover cost recovery, but pay the minimum modern award and then make a profit at the end of the day, God help us.
Yep.
So what we've got in this nation that's come out loud and clear and is still coming out is there is not an arm of government that is giving the decent operators of this nation the opportunity to stay financial and viable and safe while this underpayment system's going south. Did I make sense on that? So I'm not trying to kick the living dollars out, but that would be a nice minimum to to get to, and actually enforce it so you can quote accordingly.
Yeah, well, I think for us as a business, when we talk about retention of drivers, if we pay the award rate, it's very difficult for us to hang on to drivers.
Yeah.
So we find, on most occasions we do have to offer above award rates. We operate on an enterprise agreement for our line haul drivers, but for our local drivers, they're on an hourly rate. So we've got the award there, we look at the award, but a lot of the times we've got to apply a higher rate, and if we don't, then we lose those drivers, and we have the turnover, and it's pretty common in the transport industry. We find that drivers are quite nomadic, so they will move from one company to the other, and we have it in our organisation where we've had drivers, probably 2, 3, 4 times they'll come back. Obviously we'll look at each individual driver on a individual basis as to whether we offer them a job back with us. A lot of the times they do, but they do seem to move around quite a bit as well. So, I think we do tend to find that they get offered something else that they think is better somewhere else, and they go there, and then they find out that it may not be, what they initially thought it was going to be.
And I think, Mr. McIntosh, thank you for that too, because my conversations with the ATA, with the ALC, with Nat Roads, with the TWU, with the state organisations is along this lines. And the good old days when we had enforceable award rates of pay, everyone competed on the same rate. Yep. Some would fly under the radar, some would offer some other, things above the, or do whatever. But when you went to tender work, you tendered on that fair basis.
Yep. Now,
the disparity between, wages and payments and that is just some stages 30% or more. But my problem is I'm actually joining hands with the employers on this argument. And this is not a me versus the rest of the world argument. When you go and tender that work, you expect that you may win or lose on service, and that's fine. Yep. But when you're losing because laws are being broken in the land, that's got to hurt. And this is where I'm trying to work closely with the employer organisations to say, hang on, your members are getting burned here. We all need to stand up. So that's what that covers. But also there's a very important part of that first clause. And let's talk about our owner drivers. And I'll make sure I'm using the right terminology because I'm from the West where owner drivers, if you own the truck and drive it yourself. Okay? Now, these poor buggers put their house on the line like you do. And it's all the same, but you've got a grander scale, but they've still got the same things. So why should our owner drivers then, if they want to compete with an operator who's paying $18, $19, $20, $21 an hour, how is that fair? So this is what that first thing is that I'm trying to get. So what I'm actually trying to say is not everyone paying under the award is a rogue or a thief or a crook. But when we've got the industry, when this is becoming the norm and the standard, and I don't believe government should ever tell you what you charge. That's not our role. You charge what you need to charge. But if you're engaging subcontractors, or owner drivers, or whatever the terminology is in the eastern states here, or you're employing drivers, is it unfair to request that the laws of the land be enforced?
No.
No, not at all.
And you're not going to give up your clients on that. So I don't know if you want to, if that answers, why am I answering the questions? How did you turn that on me? Brilliant.
I think that it's a pretty broad area that you've just discussed then. If we're here for the way we differentiate ourselves a little bit within the industry and what we see, and I know that the gentleman before us talked about the kilometre rate and that it encourages people while they're paid by that. Within the awards is also to pay by the hour. The driving hour it is. It's not per hour that they're out on the road, but it is calculated at the same rate. There's a calculation in there. We do work our set rates out on driving hours for particular runs. And the reason we do this is because it matches to your logbooks. So if a driver's out on the road, he doesn't get fined by how many Ks he's done.
Yeah.
He gets fined by how many hours he drives. Why are we even mucking around for K rate? I don't understand it. So if a guy, every trip that we do, we have to set a safe driving plan for it. We have to say how many driving hours are in that schedule.
Yep.
Not one load goes out without that schedule with it.
Right.
And if there is a part there that if it varies, you fill that out and your statewide varies. Why wouldn't we align the payments to the driving hours and take the kilometre rate completely out of it? Like, it makes sense. They don't get booked by the Ks, or they don't get fined in their logbook.
No, you're right, yeah.
By the Ks. They get by how many hours they drive. So if that doesn't match up, then you've got a problem.
Is that a feeling throughout the industry, to the best of your knowledge, Mr. O'Brien?
No, I don't have that. For us, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And for our business, it makes sense, but for other businesses, it may not.
And what's got me in a little bit of conversations over the last, because I'm from the West, the good old Wild West, where everything was legal till you got to it, okay? And that's not a throwaway line, that was the West. We didn't have regulated driving hours, but, I can't argue against your statement. If it matches your logbooks, it matches your driving hours, and matches your plan, and what is the hard part. But also in the West, we didn't have this nonsense. When I say the West, I mean the North, us running north, not the East-West stuff.
Yep.
This backloading nonsense. Where the hell did this come from?
And the awards do need upgrading. We're talking about, I think they were 2010. There's a lot of advancements that have occurred in the time. The driving hours have changed, the fatigue laws have changed, but we don't change the award to suit that. So, the drivers used to have a 6-hour break, now they have to have a 7-hour break. So no one's adjusted the wages to the amount of driving hours and rest periods they have to have.
And that's invaluable. Sorry, Mr. O'Brien, that's invaluable. But I'm also locking it together because, you see, every time there's a movement, there has to be the movement up the chain too.
Yep.
We can't extend. I love nothing better than transport companies being profitable and buoyant, because guess what? It flows down the chain most times. So I suppose on a broader sphere, without putting you into any difficult situations, how is the state of the transport industry now as compared to the last few years or 20 years ago when you first entered, or whatever?
Every industry is difficult. There's no, we're not going to sit here and say that the transport industry is outside of any other market. The feedback we get from, our figures, and also from accountants that, they benchmark you, is that this year hasn't been a great year for anyone in the transport industry, but they're hoping that next year will be good. So it does put a lot of pressure on the different companies out there, and I'm not hearing any good stories out there from any other transport companies.
Just this year?
The last couple of years, but particularly last year.
So
there's not a lot of demand out there, and there's a lot of trucks, so that's where the pressure on the rates comes in.
Right. And in terms of regulation, every time I turn around, I'm getting stories about here comes another one. I'm also hearing there is no involvement with the transport industry. We're not consulted. How's your experience around that?
In regards to
everything, from putting truck bays in to building new roads to facilities in and out of ports. And
so I worked for O'Brien Transport probably about 8 years ago, and I've come back there in the last couple of years. So I had a period where I was out of the transport industry. So coming back into it, say two and a half years ago, the thing that I've really noticed is the compliance side of the business of transport, and how much that has increased from when I was there last time. So, and I think part of that is the chain of responsibility that's come through as well. So you're getting, companies now that, I think there was a huge overreaction to the chain of responsibility and what it was actually about. And you've got companies now that are coming to us and just, they want all your information that you've got, like all your registrations, all your driver details, the copies of their licences, all our insurances, which, most of that we already provided to them, but they've just gone to the next level now. But the other side of that is we already get audited for that through NHVR, so we get an accreditation certificate to say that we already do all that, and we've shown that to them. So we've got a certificate, but that's not enough for some of the transport companies that we might work for, or some of the businesses that we do work for. Yeah,
this came up earlier too. This was mentioned, and not only once, every damn time you go there. So we should explore that a bit more, because you see, I know it'd be lovely to have no regulation and, hang on, I'm using throwaway. It'd be lovely to have sensible regulation. But as you said, Mr. McIntosh, every time you turn around, there is a new one. Here we go again. And how the heck does that, and I'd be interested in your thoughts here. How does that add to the value chain? How does that add to any forms of road safety? How does that make you more productive?
Well, I'm not sure it does, because really we're burdened and tied down with administrative tasks that are involved in that. So, at the end of the day, we've got a person that's pretty well employed to look after compliance, where we never would have had that in the past. So, we've got that cost that we have to bear. Can we recover that? I'm not in the commercial side of the business, so...
And I'd say that the legislation that they've got's great. The COR is really working. Like the last change, it's all there. They've thought about it. I know we were talking about delays at DCs. Part of the legislation is we have to measure that and then engage with the people that are at the DC or the company. So whereas before we wouldn't have the courage to go and speak to them because we didn't want to lose our contracts, we actually have to now engage with those people, and we send emails and they know that they've got to respond in the correct way. So there's a mechanism in there for those things. So the COR, it's correct. It's really good. It's standing us up as a industry. Would you agree with that, Rod? It is. I think it's excellent. The actual foundation of it is great. It's the over-administration of it that's the problem.
Let's talk about that, Mr. O'Brien, because I was part of the chain of responsibility conversations, like we all were back early 90s when it first kicked off, this COR. It's taken us nearly 18 years to actually get a prosecution, but it's happened, that's fine. And it was mentioned earlier on by another witness that the chain of responsibility, or the COR legislation somehow could be, not only do you go talk to the clients and say you need to fix this up, but you're not paying the right, or you're not paying certain parts. So let's explore maybe that, because that's already there. What could we do to improve it, or what could we do to tweak it to enhance the sustainability, viability and profitability of our road transport sector? In your thoughts?
I think it's become an industry within an industry. The regulators, our audits, we can't get one audit that says that we comply to legislation, and that's the whole idea, is that we comply to the legislation. So we're being audited every month by customers, we have to have certain accreditations for, the Australian Logistics Council. It's just over the top. So we're spending all our time auditing instead of being out and helping at the nuts and bolts. We're not out training people. We're going through audits. We just need one unified body that says you comply to legislation, here it is. But it's not going to happen while they're all businesses within, it's a money-making machine.
So how, with your experience, how do we fix that there?
Well, I think you need like one central portal where if you
sorry, Mr. McIntosh, Sarah's busily typing away.
Okay.
Because we want to have solutions. We actually, and this is why I really want to talk to the people that are doing it, because we can get on the UHF and we can get on the bull crap that goes on these phones and all the Twitter crap and all the... But not a lot of people want to come up with suggestions. They're great at hanging rubbish on people. So I was seriously keen to hear from the industry what we need to do.
How many audits have we passed? We're truck safe, NDHS,
ALC and HVR.
They're all the same. It's the same bloke that comes in and does it. It's the same guy that walks through the door. Yeah, we have to pay for the audit. We pay for the audit so that we've got the...
And they're basically the same. They're pretty much... We're getting audited on the same thing by
we're in a little country town. It's the same bloke that comes in and does it for more.
Oh, my goodness me. This is what I want to hear.
Is this all been documented? Have you lodged this at all?
No, there's no submission.
Okay.
That's why Sarah's busily typing away. Yeah. So let's work our way through that, because it's not our business, but it comes at a cost, because not only are you paying for the audit for the same person to come and see the same thing, but you've got someone tied up. And you've just said, Mr. McIntosh, there is, and we love to see jobs created, but you've got to be able to cover the cost of that job that's being. So please, carry on.
Well, it'd be nice if they were actually, instead of doing an audit, they were out implementing that within the business, the safety standards, to meet the legislation. Not just sitting there saying, hey, we can meet it, actually out implementing within the business. So it's a real nuts and bolts.
So, sorry, who should be able to implement?
As a business, we're busy complying to the audit
right.
instead of being busy making sure that the legislation that we actually nuts and bolts comply.
Right. Okay. I cut you off, Mr. McIntosh.
That's all right.
No, please, both.
So, my thinking would be that we would have some sort of central portal that, there's one audit that covers everything.
And that should be 3 yearly, 1 yearly?
Well,
what would be your thoughts?
Probably every 2 years, I think. Like most of them are every 2 years, some of them are every year. And not only do we get audited from those bodies, but then you've got the businesses that we work for that want to audit us as well. So they might ask for, are you accredited under this? Yes, we are. Okay, then you don't have to answer this body of questions. Move on to the next one. Okay. Some of them don't do that. They go, are you accredited? Yes, we are, but we still want you to answer all these questions anyway and provide all the documents that you actually provided to that to meet that audit as well. So can you upload that into our system? So there's all that side of it. But so if there was one portal that company could go into that portal and put in O'Brien Transport, yes, they're accredited under this, and that, and they've done all that. Okay, no worries. All we need off them is their insurance documentation, and away we go.
And how much time, if that was, and I get that one portal where you go and someone else was probably running and tying up the business, would that be a significant saving to the operation?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not just you, it's everyone that's copying this.
Yeah, it'd be the same for every business. And the thing is if you've got 3 trucks or you've got 100 trucks, you're going to have to do the same thing. So I don't know. I think we see a lot of the smaller companies disappearing because of that fact. They can't sustain it. They can't sustain the cost of it, and they can't provide the resource to be able to do it. Because if they're not they're not employing a compliance manager to do it, well, they're having to do it themselves.
Okay. All right. So that's one thing. What else should we be doing? What else could we look at? This is just a generic statement. I'm going to say to you, I'll say this to you, Mr. O'Brien. I'll say, okay, you're the minister.
Yep.
You're the Minister for Transport. You've got 20 minutes left or 15 minutes left.
Yep.
How do we improve this industry? And when I say improve, I'm not attacking our operators.
No.
I'm saying improve. You know what I mean.
I think the industry is fairly healthy on the compliance side. Yes, there's administration issues there, which we can... but I think as an industry, I'm pretty proud to be part of it because I think we try really hard. I think there's a lot of effort that goes into the industry. On the customer side, I think that it is a marketplace. You have to position yourself in the market and use your strategic advantages and your innovation to go forward. One of the major... It's a marketplace out there, and we do sign contracts, but one of the impacts is we're seeing the larger companies and their payment terms within our industry it really makes our industry struggle, and I think that wouldn't be just limited to our company. We're seeing the trend of 120-day payment terms. We can't sustain that, so then we have to go out and find debt with the banks. So it cuts into that margin again. It's already there. So there's a lot of little things there that I think that the government could definitely put a bit of pressure on companies for fair payment terms. I think that this does flow down to the owner drivers and why they're getting paid certain amounts of money, because they can't go out and work for a company that's going to pay them 120 days. So they'll go and work for a company that pays them 7 days, and they're stuck working for them because they can't go out and work for the other companies to get the primary loads because they need the cash flow. I think that if I was...
if you were the minister,
I would be certainly trying to put pressure on the terms, and that is happening out there. So these are things that we're discussing. Our bodies, Nat Road, and they're putting pressure on people, and we're seeing the results of that. So we've gone out last year, last sort of 5 years, terms have gone out. We're seeing them come back in now, which is really good. We're seeing results within that industry, and I think that that will go some way to trying to correct payments for the subcontractors or the owner drivers.
Would I be unfair to say all? I don't want to differentiate between owner-drivers and small to medium enterprises or large.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, Mr O'Brien, I understand that O'Brien Transport to come to an arrangement with someone else that is not 7 days or 14 or 28. I get that.
Yep.
So,
but again, we're out. As a business, we're logistics. We're not bankers. So we're all of a sudden, I'm learning a lot about banking, learning a lot about, about how to finance, and that's what it becomes. You get out of the core business into, well, if we're able to finance this, we can compete.
That was raised with me in Tasmania yesterday.
Yeah.
In the conversation I was having with the Tasmanian Transport Association, they were exactly down that same. The directors were saying the same thing as you're saying now.
Yeah.
So if I may on that, if I can, because I want to hear the rest of it.
Yep.
So it's just quiz as we go. One of the latest ones that came out not long ago is and I will not mention the transport company. I wouldn't dare do it, and I won't mention the client. 150 days, and I'm not talking 3 or 4 pallets every couple of weeks. So anyway, and I know the work Nat Rhodes is doing, and look, the work Warren and Scott are doing around this stuff is they're not hiding the fact, and there is the 30-day conversations and all that sort of stuff. But please keep going, Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah. So I think the marketplace is there's forces that keep coming. The marketplace in itself of the transport industry, I think, sits really well and adjusts to any pricing changes. So we have to adjust for that banking problem where we have to increase that in our rates. And I think it takes us time to adjust to that, though. It's not, we educate ourselves as we go along, but hopefully those terms will come back in. We see things where we have additional costs thrown in on top of, we might negotiate rates for 2 years with clauses, then we think there'll be an increase in tolls. For Melbourne's an example. The Toll Marine doubled their tolls overnight for the trucking industry, so we didn't receive. It was the same road. There was no efficiencies gained. If you open another road and we get an efficiency, I'm happy to pay a toll. But when you're sitting there, if I said to my client, I'm going to double I wrote a mock letter and said I'm going to double my cost to you guys. That as a joke, because I wanted them to pay the tolls. They get that no, it's a monopoly.
Yeah.
The roads are a monopoly. We have to use that road. We've got no other choice but to use that road.
Yeah.
But that we see that from the government. How does it make you feel when you know it's just another tax? The end result is we put our prices up to our customers, and the customers pass it on to the consumer. It's just another tax. How can they possibly go and double tolls?
Yeah, that's right.
But we're slow to react to that, and we see those things come through, and we think, well, why? There's no support from the government. Can't they see that as well?
But what's come out in my other conversations is the amount of companies that don't have the ability to get that back.
No, well, and it's a small percent that you do get back. You don't retain it. You don't get it all back. Some people just say no, and you've got to make that choice whether to do that work or not. It's a marketplace, and there's people we don't do work for that are on that side of town. We prefer to work this side of town because we don't want to go through the tolls.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Sorry, I cut in again.
Yep. Maybe I think the industry's pretty healthy. I think it was good to hear from the drivers. I think we need really good feedback from those guys because they're our industry. If we don't have them, we can't move product. So, I, of course, called around and had a chat to a lot of our drivers. On the parking bays, just the feedback was pretty good, like generally very clean. People, we're doing the right thing. Yes, I heard the gentleman mention before that they're on hills, but generally they're saying that at times they're overcrowded, but generally they're pretty clean and good. The feedback was good, and I think that's good to say. When we're talking about trying to retain people within the industry, we get our, it is a marketplace, so they do get paid to the market. If we're having a lack of drivers, we would increase our wages to meet the market so that we've got drivers. So as it shrinks, maybe there's opportunities in it for them to increase what they get paid, and we need to look at that as well.
Sorry, Mr. Bob.
Yep.
While we're talking about it, can I raise with you the unfortunately the problem of the unpaid waiting times at DCs and all that? Do you want to talk about that? Because this is really going. I didn't realise it was that rampant here.
All things going well, the driver spends about an hour and a half, 2 hours unloading at a DC. If, for example, within our company, if a driver is going to be there longer than he sees the 2 hours, he'll call and then gives us the opportunity to call the customer and say, hey, what's his wait going to be like? And, if it's significant, we'll pay the driver to sit there and wait, because that's, we want to make sure that they're earning a good living, because if we don't have them, our trucks can't drive down the road. So I know there are elements where people just sit them there, but I don't think it's as common as every driver. So there is some, you want to make sure that they're rewarded somehow. If they're broken down, they get paid. All those things are outside of their control.
So when you say if it's broken down, they'll get paid, is that you'll pay them, O'Brien Transport, or do all truck drive owners pay, or that's...
No, we pay it out of our money.
That's right, yeah. So you guys do it, but not necessarily everyone, is that?
No, it wouldn't be. No, I wouldn't think so. But
what it does, sorry, Dan.
Yeah, it does take the anxiety.
What it does is it takes the anxiety away for them if they're sitting there. So if they sit there for a couple of hours, and that they do expect that it could be a couple of hours. Anything beyond that, like not all of them, but some of them become quite anxious then, and then that can lead to them being a little bit disgruntled, and they can go in then and have some sort of argument with the guy. Why can't we get unloaded? What's the hold up? And sometimes you end up with drivers getting turned away at that stage because they've threatened someone or someone like. So we want to take that anxiety away for them. So that's why if they get held up, then we pay them a rate if they're sitting there.
Look, I'll throw this one at you too. Oh, sorry, Senator Rennie.
You're right.
I'll throw this one at you too, Mr. O'Brien, because you pay by the hour. Yeah. And I know that you might want to flick to ALC or NAT Roads or whoever, but would it be supported by O'Brien Transport, for example, if we said to ourselves, well, hang on, I'm working out very clearly, the kilometre rate can leave it open to all sorts of exploitations when there's a kilometre rate. It can happen. All right, anyway. Would it be supported by O'Brien Transport that seriously, if you're paid by the hour when you turn up, there should be a payment. There should be a cost a cost on the top of the supply chain as part of the payment system.
Absolutely.
Right, that's fantastic.
Yep. If we turn up in the right place at the right time, and we're there, we've allowed an hour and a half in our tender for that truck to sit there and be unloaded, and that's what they state in their tender, it's going to take that. We go outside of that, there should be a cost. Yes, I think that is fair and reasonable.
Yep. Great, okay. Now, Mr. O'Brien, you've got about 5 minutes left as the Minister. What else are you going to fix?
What have I got here?
You're supposed to do this over a car and a crown.
Well, what about...
it's endless.
One of the questions there is about career pathways, and the fellow there before us was talking about it. So it is like obviously an ageing workforce for us. As I think the average age is around about 47 for a driver these days. We've actually got a driver that drives for us. He's 78. He drives B double, so he's still in the industry, but and they do wear out. There's no doubt about it. So we certainly want to try and bring young people into the industry, which is, as I'm pretty sure you're going to hear, it's quite difficult. As a business at O'Brien Transport, we've got the luxury of, we've got small trucks, so we can bring young people through, and we do that at the moment. We've got guys that have come out of school, they come in, they can drive a small truck on a car licence to get a little bit of experience, and then we pay for them to get upgraded licences, so they go to their heavy rigid then, and then they get a little bit of experience in that, and then they go through the HC, and then sometimes they get up to MC as well. Sometimes it's hard to keep them in the industry, so we try hard, we work hard with them on that. But I think, and I've heard this before as well, is maybe looking at some sort of apprenticeship scheme in the transport industry where we can bring young people in, give them the exposure. And you're probably not going to capture all of them, but some of them may hang around is what we want to do. And I know it's difficult because I had a son that was doing an apprenticeship and they don't get paid much, so it's hard for them. Whereas, a young fella coming out of school can go and work at say a distribution centre and get, $30 an hour, a casual rate for they're making good money, and all they really care about is, making money and going out on the weekend and be able to spend money and have a good time. So somehow, if we can have an apprenticeship scheme that's attractive to young people to get them into the transport industry, I think something that we seriously should look at.
That conversation started, Mr. McIntosh, last week, and all credit where credit is due. There was a working group elected out of the Transport Industry Standards Forum that had met with Minister Cash last week. I'd briefed Minister Cash a couple of weeks prior to that, and they've had an hour and 3/4 with the Minister and her department, and I can tell you now they're wanting to progress the conversation about, one, how do we get the school kids before they leave? Why are we in a situation where we tell the kids to leave school and come back to us when they've got their licences? Yeah, that's not like as if that happens. How do we make it attractive for young ones? How do we get more women into the industry? Yeah. And how do we attract workers from other industries who might want to transgress? But apprenticeship, traineeships is all part of the conversation now.
We're seeing a few young people come through and we're putting the time into them.
Well, I'm wrapped away with what you do there. So with the couple of minutes left, tell me how you get them. Do you actually go to the school and you present to them, or you go to the parents, or what do you do?
I think most of it's sort of been a bit of word of mouth and a few young people that, that we either, the owners might know, or some of the people that work for us know as well. So we haven't actually gone out and advertised for it, because it does come down to what your capacity is and how many you can take on as well, I suppose, is the thing. Because, a lot of them we're bringing in and sort of bearing the cost of the fact that they're going to work for us, that they haven't got a lot of experience, so they're more than likely an extra. So we're sort of bearing that cost as well. So, we can't have 20 of them, or, if there was some sort of incentive for businesses, I think.
And they're good workers once they are through. Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, and we've got a couple. We've probably got half a dozen guys there now that have come through that way. And they've got their rigid licences now and their forklift licences, and they might stick around.
And I have no doubt you'll get that feedback from NatRose, because they're part of that working group as well. But we're not unashamedly there. I shouldn't say they're not backward in coming forward. That there needs to be an investment from government too. Yeah. And, we're very good at money towards certain things like hairdressing or chefing or something, but transport's never been. Well, it's been a long time since transport's had any receivership from those taxpayer dollars, and it's now time to.
Yep. Even I remember, if we went back 10 years ago, if you took people on, you got a discount off your tax. There was some really good schemes going around to have those people involved. So you get payroll tax exemptions and stuff like that.
That's back on the table.
Well, let's get it going. And now, because I know we're going to finish here, just on the technologies, we are moving as an industry. I think there's great safety technologies out there now, but I think there should be some incentive to put to fit. There is benefits to the company to fit those, but I think there should be also a break somehow to get these trucks in, the new safety technologies in all the trucks, because it is a significant cost to try and retrofit these. So the new trucks coming out, you can sort of wear the cost of that because it goes into your finance, but to retrofit the technologies right through the fleets, look, the technologies out there for fatigue is amazing, and we need to try and get those through I think if I was the minister, I would be trying to get the technologies in every truck, because it's amazing, fatigue alerts there. I think there's, if we can get some breaks so we can assist us in getting the costs into the trucks.
Subsidise.
Yeah, subsidise something. It doesn't have to be a grant or anything. It could be tax relief at some point, or something that says, if you guys reach this level, then you get a bit of a discount. Because at the moment, that's not being set by legislation. It's being set by the customers and their expectations. So it's about, if you have these technologies, you can work for these companies, and that's the standard. So that standard of the industry isn't being set by legislation. That's been set by these customers that are, they're very engaging and they're safety conscious, because at the end of the day, it's their brand going up and down the highways on our trucks. So they pay respect to the transport industry and want to do it safely as well.
I think it's a very good point.
And we don't mind those standards. We're happy. We want to be at what standard they set. We want to be at that standard. So, we talk about the seeing eye machines and
great.
that sort of technology.
Vibrate and bells go off.
So, we would put them in all our trucks tomorrow.
Yep.
If we had some assistance, because it's a huge cost.
I think that's a very good point, that one. Mr. O'Brien, I think we've run out of time, have we? Look, thank you very much for coming along. We do appreciate that. Thanks, Mr. McIntosh. We know how to get you, and what we have worked out, you weren't the ones that were being talked about by the previous witness, so that's good.
But he's valid in what he says. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to listen to those guys.
Exactly right. Yeah. So thank you very much, gentlemen. That brings us to 12. Now we'll take a 30-minute break, and then we'll hear from Mr. Rowe.